Hey everybody, hello again. This is Courtney Williams for the last time. I am of the Brown Bike Girl, which is a bicycle advocacy consulting firm. I specialize in making sure that equitable resources, programs, initiatives, whatever else are made on behalf of BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, wherever we may be. I am based in Brooklyn, New York, where I also hold the citizen advocate position as the NYC People's Bike Mayor. A citizen advocate is basically a volunteer person who dedicates their 2 years of their life to raising issues that make things better for cyclists in their community. So, as your bike mayor, I have been holding events to help us overcome COVID. You may or may not be familiar with something called Big Fix Days, where I go to communities of color and set up large scale free bike repair events where people can get their bikes repaired at no cost so that they can stay off of public transportation and minimize their contracting or spread of COVID, as well as I've been doing monthly bike mayor classes. This is the last one of this year, where I teach people how to navigate the streets, stay alive, bike defensively, extend their skills so that they can ride year round. And tonight, we're going to be doing a rebroadcast of something that I did last year with two professional mechanics and good friends, Robin of Bike Plant and Greg of Bike Rescue. And they're going to talk to us about bikes and how they're not all the same. We all know they're not the same, but what does that really mean in terms of quality and defects? What a relationship with a actual bike mechanic and local bike shop can do for you versus what happens and potential risk you take when you order offline from big box stores, assemble things on your own, etc. As you know, before we start this class tonight, I wanted to bring to you our special guest, as I mentioned in the chat, who are Julia Kite-Laidlaw, of NYC Department of Transportation, and Dan Flanzig, a good friend and supporter of a long time of Flanzig and Flanzig Bike Lawyers. And we want to talk about e-bikes. E-bikes was not something that was as clear last year as it is this year, and it keeps getting more and more evolved, involving regulations. What is a e-bike? Where does it belong or not belong? What are these things that are in the bike lane that are going too fast, et cetera, et cetera? So we're going to kick it off with Julia. Julia has a very short presentation for us to show us, basically, you've seen it on the street, so what is it and does it belong there? And there's a chart at the end that I will send out to everybody who's registered to let you all have it and keep reference of it. But overall, the whole concept of tonight is I don't want any hardworking New Yorker to spend their money on something that might fail them, either in terms of quality, breaking, and injury, or investing their money into presenting presents or buying presents for themselves that technically should not be here and might one day become the object of confiscation or fines. So, to that extent, thank you, Julia. Thank you, Dan, for being here. And I'm going to spotlight Julia, who's going to share her screen.
Thank you, Courtney, and thank you very much for having me here tonight. The work you're doing is valuable and amazing, and it's really a pleasure to be here. My name is Julia Kite-Laidlaw. I'm the Director of Safety Policy at New York City DOT, and here's a quick guide with some resources linked at the end to making sure you know, like Courtney said, what's legal and what's not, and how to tell the difference. So first of all, what exactly is an e-bike, or as it's called in the state law that made them legal, a bicycle with electric assist? The key things that make an e-bike are it must have operable pedals that actually work, aren't just there for show, and it has to have an electric motor that's less than 750 watts. So two models here, it doesn't matter if it's got, a battery pack attached or if it's got things that are built in. They come from all over the spectrum when it comes to price. You can even buy kits online that can convert a regular bike into an e-bike. But the key things are operable pedals, and that motor can't be 750 watts or more. You've probably heard a lot about e-bike classes. When e-bikes were legalized in New York, these three classes were what they were divided into. And these are based on a model from California, but they're a little bit different here in New York. Class 1 is pedal assist, meaning you can go entirely on pedal power, or you can use that motor that kicks in while you're pedaling, but that motor has to cut out when you hit 20 miles an hour. Class 2 is the kind of throttle bikes like that Arrow I just showed you. You don't have to be pedaling in order to get that assist, but if you want to, you can. But again, that motor can't go more than 20 miles per hour. And then Class 3 is really unique to New York, and it's unique to New York City too. This is a throttle bike that can't go over 25 miles per hour. You cannot ride these outside New York City, not in Westchester, not in Nassau, not anywhere else, and you have to wear a helmet. This is different from a Class 3 you might have seen in other places, like Class 3 in California means pedal assist up to 28 miles per hour. This is a special category we made in New York City to accommodate a lot of the bikes we were seeing on the road. And just remember, even if you're using that throttle, the pedals have to be operable. And no matter what kind of e-bike you're using, you are allowed to use the bike lane. So I know that there might be some arguments among bikers about whether e-bikes should use the bike lane or not, but I'm here to say that as a matter of city policy, all e-bikes can use the bike lane. Now, the thing to really watch out for here is that there are a lot of businesses that will say what they offer is an e-bike, but it is not a bike, not legal, not in any sense of the word. Here are two examples here where the word bike is very prominently on the marketing materials, but no, this thing on the left is a motorcycle, and it probably has a vehicle identification number. I don't know, but as you can see, no pedals, it's not a bike. And certainly whatever motor it has is a lot more than 750 watts. What you're seeing on the right, again, they might market it as an e-bike, but there's no pedals. It's actually an illegal moped. They might call it an e-scooter as well, but as I will show you in a second, it is not a scooter by the legal definition either. So you want to be careful not to buy something that is just not legal. What is an e-scooter exactly? Now, this could be really confusing because unlike e-bikes, it's a newer technology. The market's still evolving. But what state law says is that an e-scooter has to have handlebars, an electric motor, not a gas motor. It has to have either a floorboard or it can have a seat, and it must weigh no more than 100 pounds. So the two examples I'm showing you here, the stand-up e-scooter you've probably seen a million times, that's legal, but the seated version, which is actually one of the models available in the East Bronx Pilot, that's also a legal e-scooter. It's not an e-bike because notice she doesn't have pedals, but it fits the definition because it's got the handlebars, the motor, a seat, and it weighs under 100 pounds. And what's different between e-bikes and e-scooters, e-bike classes are all depending on really what the bike is capable of doing. Those motors have to cut out at 20 or 25 miles per hour. With e-scooters, it's a little bit different. It's based on behavior. While an e-scooter can go up to 20 miles per hour, in New York City, the rule is you can't go faster than 15. And in many cases, we treat e-scooters just like e-bikes. You can use the bike lane. We highly encourage it. So it gets confusing because a lot of things are called scooters. We don't really have a common vocabulary. The media, police, DOT, we might all be saying different things, and we're working on it. But just as a little guide here, what you're looking at the left, what people might call like a Vespa scooter, those are actually called limited use motorcycles in terms of the law. It has something called a vehicle identification number, which is on every car, every truck, every motorcycle and moped. If you have a vehicle identification number, you have to register that vehicle with the DMV, and that's how you get a license plate. Some of these Vespa type scooters are electric, some are gas, but you can rest assured they all weigh over 100 pounds, so they are not e-scooters. If you want to ride one of these, you're going to need a driver's license and you're going to need registration. The kind of scooter that you see in the middle, these are mobility aids for people with disabilities, and no license, no registration, and you can ride those on the sidewalk all you want. E-scooters and e-bikes, though, do not ride those on the sidewalk, definitely not allowed. And then the kind of ambiguous, kind of difficult, less easy to understand on the right here, this is what we call a motorized scooter in city law. And these you cannot ride, you cannot sell them legally. All of these, you know, they're not e-bikes because they don't have pedals. You might see some models that have like fake pedals, but remember the law says an e-bike has to have operable pedals. These all weigh over 100 pounds and they don't have vehicle identification numbers, so you can't register them as proper motorcycles or mopeds. These, do not spend your money on them because they are illegal. So what makes those illegal? This is part of the city laws or administrative code. Wheeled devices with handlebars. You can sit on them or stand on them just like e-scooters, but these have to be powered by either electric or gas, no pedaling, and you can't register them with the DMV. And they weigh more than 100 pounds. They're not e-scooters. These could get you in trouble. I know we all see them on the street all the time. We know that a lot of people ride them. There's no consequences, but I would not risk it. I would not spend your money because there's a risk you could get this confiscated. So here's just a kind of simple flow chart I put together. If you're wondering, what you're seeing, is it legal or not? First thing to look at, the whole pedals. If it's got pedals, then you're generally fine. It's going to be an e-bike. You don't need a license. You can go on bridge paths. You can go on bike lanes. You treat it exactly like a regular pedal bicycle. If it doesn't have pedals, then you're kind of in this difficult zone where what you have might be a moped, what you have might be an e-scooter, or it could be that device that just isn't legal at all. And the main thing to remember is that if it counts as a moped or a scooter, legal or not, stay out of the bike lanes and stay out of the bridge paths that are meant for bikes or pedestrians, because it's just an entirely different level of power and of momentum and weight. So summing it up here, if you want specifically, if you're looking to buy one of these, you can ask your retailer, do you know what class this is? Do you know what the maximum speed is? If you want a specific device, you might want to know what the weight is. But if it's over 100 pounds, doesn't have pedals and doesn't have a VIN, I would definitely say don't buy it. And that so long as you're sure what you have is an e-scooter or an e-bike, go ahead, use the bike lanes. We want you to use the bike lanes, but motorcycles and mopeds definitely stay out. So here is a more involved chart that I urge everyone to look at in their own time. I've got a link up here, but this kind of goes into a little more detail about what all the different classes are, what's okay, what's not. It also talks about, on the far right here, some non-bike related devices you may have seen that, again, are not legal, and we can't encourage buying them from a city perspective because you do run the risk of confiscating them. So as we continue our bike lane build out, we really hope that people, do embrace the legal forms of micromobility. E-bikes, they're fun, they're convenient, they help you get over longer distances. You don't need me to, evangelize for how great they are, but we just want to make sure everyone knows where they're supposed to be and knows what's legal.
Thank you so much, Julia. Are you able to drop that link into the chat so people can have it on their own and look at it? Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so I am going to unmute Mr. Flanzig here. I'm sending you a request. Hey there. And I'm going to also highlight you. And I'm going to highlight myself and Julia as well. Add to the spotlight, boom, and add to the spotlight, boom. All right, so there are some subtle differences in our pedal / manual pedal. So it only goes if we pedal it, bikes and e-scooters and e-bikes that people might not be aware of. And they're kind of things that are really dear to cyclists, which is number one, in New York City, there is no required helmet law for adults, right? For a manual pedal bike, but that's not the case when it comes to e-bikes and e-scooters. So Legal Mind, please inform us what the technicals on that are.
Sure. So when we designate these class 1, class 2, class 3 bikes in New York State and New York City, class 3, which is allowing a maximum speed up to 25 miles an hour, now requires a helmet. With regard to scooters, no one under the age of 16, we'll get to that in a minute, is allowed to ride an e-scooter. However, anyone who's riding 16, 17 years old are required to wear a helmet on an e-scooter.
Okay, great. Another thing that cyclists, particularly a handful, really appreciate bikes for is that in New York City, it's technically not illegal to ride a manual pedal bike while intoxicated to or from the bar or under the influence of drugs. Is that also true for e-bikes and e-scooters?
No, now with the change of the law, both in New York State and New York City, it is now illegal to ride an e-bike or an e-scooter while drunk or under the influence of any narcotics.
Okay. Well, weed is not a narcotic, so does weed count?
I don't think weed would count because it's not a narcotic. I guess, yes, I'm going to say no.
Well, we're our own safety. Don't be impaired in general.
I always, the caveat, we don't exactly. We don't encourage it.
Don't encourage, not encourage. Okay. Going into the technicals of speed limits. So as Julia pointed out, For class 1 and 2, we have a max speed operation 20. And for class 3, max speed is 25. Our pedal assist should cut out after that, so we can't go faster. And for scooters, 15 is maximum miles per hour. Does that mean that our bicycles, our legal e-bicycles, should not operate beyond 20 or 25, or it means that they can't physically have the ability to go beyond 20 and 25? And the same thing for scooters, because there are scooters out there that go 60 and 70 miles an hour. Whomever feels most comfortable chiming in about that, please let us know.
Yeah, Julia had a good point. I'll let Julia start and I'll finish up if you want.
Sure.
So when it comes to e-bikes, the limits are really on the physical capability of that bike. A class 1 pedal assist, that motor needs to stop providing the assistance when you hit that 20 miles per hour for the class 1 and 2, and 25 for the class 3. Scooters is a bit different. Scooters is more what you should be doing as a behavior. The scooters might be capable of going up to 20 miles per hour, but you must not go over 15 in New York City. And as for the ones that can go 60 or 70, those are not okay in New York City.
Exactly. Yeah, I concur with what Julia said. Again, some of this is a relatively new law that needs to be a little bit flushed out, and the readings aren't always so clear. But I think that's a fair reading of the law, Julia.
Yeah, I mean, these are still evolving. It's a good point. It's pretty much new technology, and the law can often be slow to adapt. So perhaps in a couple of years, things will change, but that's what it is right now.
That's excellent to point out. Like, law is not static. It is evolving. Just last year, some things weren't legal that are now legal in terms of categories of e-bikes. If we can, Dan, let's talk about the future and where things belong and where things might be going. You had a point that you sent to me that I wanted to get clarified, which is it says that if you're parking a bike for transportation of goods, so like a commercial vehicle or you're running errands and stuff, it's okay for you to temporarily park on the sidewalk, but then it says all others cannot. So does that mean that technically cargo bikes, and personal e-bikes actually belong parked in the street or elsewhere?
Correct. The law really says you can't place a bike onto a sidewalk that would interfere with the flow of pedestrian traffic. The exception to that is in the purposes of commercial use. For unloading or loading goods, you're allowed to temporarily park on the sidewalk for that purpose. An e-bike, there is no carve out for e-scooters here.
Is there a possibility, because we all walk past restaurants, and this will really be the last question. We all walk past restaurants and see like their fleet of delivery bikes parked up against either their building or on the parking rack. Is that technically something that should be allowed?
I mean, under the statute, the way I read it, no, it would not be allowed to be permanently parked there. It could just be temporarily.
Okay. And is that something that we honestly anticipate becoming enforced since it's so common, or what are your
That's a great
foresight?
question. Talk about changing laws. We now have a new statute that's going to come out with regard to abandoned bikes and bikes that are locked up to city property. So I don't, it might be an issue as that law rolls out, I think, next year, whether or not people will be able to continue to lock their bikes up to these things without the fear of them being cut by sanitation department. It is concerned, but under the statute, the way I read it right now, no, it can't be there.
Okay. And the last thing is the big scary part, which is it likely that e-bikes that are not legal will start to be, so like these little crotch rockety moped motor thingies that Julia said shouldn't be sold or brought into the city? Is it very likely that confiscations of like normal residents, non-working cyclists, will start to happen with our evolving laws?
Yeah, under what Julia cited to 19-176.2, anything that's a motorized vehicle that's not defined as we define e-scooters or e-bikes under these definitions is subject to seizure by the city of New York. This went back to even when riding on the sidewalk, believe it or not, even though that didn't seem like a seizable offense, a police officer could seize your bike for riding on the sidewalk.
Yikes.
Yeah, so consistent with that, they're going to have the authority to seize any of these motorized scooters that are defined in these categories that we talked about tonight.
Okay. I would hate to see people start getting chased down on these, but it is really important for folks to operate them in the right places, right? Because the whole point of the law is to help us stay out of each other's way and to be safe and courteous to each other. It's really when the illegal, unclassified bikes are in places that endanger cyclists or vice versa that we create a chaos that draws attention to the issue, right? That really leads to these kind of confiscations and police attention, etc. So audience, if you know folks who got these things, please tell them where they should or should not operate based on the information that Julia has given us, based on the chart that you have. And again, I'll send it out to everybody who's registered. And let's do our best to keep our city flowing and safe. Dan, Julia, I so appreciate you being here. We're not going to do Q&A on this part because I want to get us moving into our broadcast. However, they are going to hang around for a bit in the chat box, so you can chat directly to Julia or Dan with questions. And if they have the ability to answer them, they will in this format. And will you two both drop your email addresses in there for people's reference?
Sure.
All right. I so appreciate you. Both Dan and Julia are on Instagram and Twitter. So you can get at what's your handle on Instagram, Dan?
For me, at New York Bike Lawyer.
At New York Bike Lawyer, and Julia is under NYC _DOT. Is that correct?
Yes, you can reach DOT there, or my personal Julia Kite. I'm happy to answer any questions I can or refer you to the right person.
All righty, y'all. Thank you so much.